Danielle Smith the other day went to Florida to go kiki with PragerU in their own little um gala and tried to convince Americans that they shouldn't be taking over Canada. They shouldn't be messing with Canadian oil pretty much because that's the only thing she fucking cares about. Um And this was advertised after the fact by this PragerU host whose name I don't even know because I don't watch this crap. And this one here, I mean. And now I want to see what she says here and see, later how she's going to justify talking to more people who want to annex our fucking country with a premier who, instead of being Canada first, like all of the other premiers, is Alberta first, aka big oil first.
Convince you not to come here and sit with PragerU.
You heard that, hey? We're in a bit of a rough patch with our relationship with the United States right now. Alberta is a subnational government in the same way that a state is a subnational government, and we're located just above Montana. I kind of like to describe us as the Texas of the North. I think similar character, a little bit of an independent streak.
That's why I like you.
It's really unfortunate that we have a few of those areas where there's a very high tariff. 98% of all goods that go between Canada and the U.S. are tariff-free.
Our president knows how to negotiate.
Yeah.
And he
I love that. Who doesn't love a Prager urine video? Thank you.
also knows who he's negotiating for, the American people. And Americans are starting to ask, how much should America take on when it comes to the rest of the world? Premier Danielle Smith, I love that your team calls you the new Iron Lady. Do you know that?
I didn't know that.
I totally see
but
why.
I am a great admirer.
Ew. Comparing her to Margaret Thatcher and then Danielle Smith being A-okay with that? Ew. On so many levels. Ew. If somebody compared me to Margaret Thatcher, I would be so incredibly insulted. Ew. Ew, 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 ew.
Admirer of Margaret Thatcher. I got involved in politics just after she left office, and my social circle talked a lot about that historic relationship between your president, Ronald Reagan at the time, and Margaret Thatcher, and how they really changed the world. So she was a great inspiration to me.
Yeah, well, the people who changed the world are the people who were truly willing to run against the herd. And I'm sure there's always a balance between listening to the advisors and then listening to your heart and listening to God and making the right decisions when all this pressure is on you, which right now there's a ton of pressure on you. I know that the media was trying to convince you not to come here and sit with PragerU.
You heard that, hey?
I heard about it.
It is, we're in a bit of a rough patch with our relationship with the United States.
Yeah, we kind of didn't want you to go down to the States and entertain people who literally say that they want their president to turn us into the 51st fucking state. Like, Danielle Smith, why aren't you, as someone from Ontario, thank God doesn't live in fucking Alberta, but as someone from Alberta, from Ontario, like, why wouldn't you want to rep your country? You know what I mean? Like, I don't like it. I don't like it. It's very self-serving. It's very doing it for big oil.
United States right now, and I've taken a bit of a different approach. I tend to believe that if you've got a problem in your relationship, you talk more rather than talk less. You engage in diplomacy, and so my approach has always been that we have this historic, wonderful relationship with the United States. Going to go through a little rough patch, and then it will be back to being an historic, wonderful relationship in the future. But if you don't take that view, you can say things and do things in the meantime.
That is literally the opposite of how the entire country fucking feels, though. like politicians are telling Canadians not to travel to America because of how absolutely horrid it is. Not only that, but also how things are going with trade. Like, Jesus Christ. Chatter says the reason Reagan and Thatcher had such a close relationship is because Thatcher was actually Ronald Reagan and Trey. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised by that. That is a good one.
that might damage the relationship. I don't want to do that. And so I've taken a bit of I feel like I should come down here and help to uh, persuade some of the influencers that are down here that the path.
But also, don't say that too loudly around Danielle Smith. She is anti-drag and anti-trans and all that shit. The one was stolen from. Okay, thank you. Thank you for giving credit. It was still super funny though.
Path that the U.S. president is taking is not going to be good for our country, but even worse, it's not going to be good for the Americans either. And that's part of the reason why I'm here.
Well, at the very least, I hope that Canadians appreciate that you are not the leader that hides under the table when you have something important to say. And I think that the world is changing in that way, where at least we see this in the United States of America. What we appreciate about Donald Trump, our president, is that he's very transparent. He doesn't hide under the table. We know what he's thinking. Sometimes people might think that we know too much of what he's thinking, but really, I think we appreciate that. And this idea that politicians should always read from a teleprompter or be extra, extra careful because God forbid they actually share the truth with the people who are following them and holding them accountable and voting for them. I just think times have changed, not just in the United States, but I'd hope to think that around the world, people just want transparent leadership.
By transparent leadership, they mean living in a post-truth world because nothing that comes out of Trump's fucking mouth is honest at all.
I think that's the case. I mean, but remember, we're coming off 10 years of cancel culture, 10 years.
Oh my fucking God. Okay. She's going to go with the whole conservative 10 years of Trudeau liberals, 10 years of the Trudeau liberals. Oh, the oppression. Oh, the horror. Shut the fuck up. Oh my God.
Years of saying one thing the wrong way, having a microaggression, misgendering someone, that could get you canceled in the public sphere. People were losing their jobs, especially in the idea sphere. And so I think that now we're seeing that people understand that's gone a little bit too far, that you don't end up getting to the bottom of any problems if you can't speak sincerely and you can't speak your views. I still think maybe we're a little bit further behind in Canada, being able to have that full, robust debate on all issues. But I think that the world.
Wow, that literally coming from the lady who passed a fucking bill/policy recently that purposely made it so that teachers would have to out their students to their fucking parents, their potentially abusive parents, on if they wanted to change their name and socially transition or identified as a fucking different gender. Oh my God, I fucking hate Danielle Smith. Why are you just so terrible? And blaming this all on fucking culture war when you were the one who is committing fucking trans genocide. Oh my God.
Is certainly looking for some honest discussion. I think it's the only way that you ever get to the bottom of problems. You have to hear different sides, test your own ideas, and then either you change your view or you come back thinking, okay, I'm stronger in my views than ever because they've been tested. I've always felt that. I came from a talk radio background. I tried to have that full, robust discussion, and I'm glad we're getting back to that again.
Yeah, aren't Canadians exhausted by political correctness and censorship? And I know you all went through the Freedom Convoy with the trucks during the lockdowns. I just as an outsider, as an American, I made this joke as we were walking into one of the team members saying, I don't think they have freedom of speech in Canada. And they're like,
we have freedom of expression, which covers freedom of speech and honestly covers more than what freedom of speech covers. Like, oh my fucking God. Just PragerU people make me not like America as a country, not the people, obviously. Oh my God, it's so fucking annoying.
Well, we're not quite sure, but don't you want that? Don't you want?
Also, sorry, Jatters, your ears are probably dying after that.
Want to hear the truth? Don't Canadians want freedom of speech?
I can tell you that I think there's pockets of it for sure. And what you're beginning to see is that if you cannot have the honest conversation in the mainstream media, that there's a number of alternative media sources that are coming out, podcasts and bloggers, as well as those who are doing YouTube videos. And so I think you're seeing this around the world, that people will find an outlet, not only to express their own views, but to be able to have a platform so that people can come together and hear views that they may not see expressed in the mainstream media. I don't know that that's healthy for our democracy, to have everybody balkanized in their own corner. I prefer if we could all have a kind of a common platform where
Chatter says, the woke crowd is trying to silence you, PragerU. Damn, I wish it worked. Please shut up. Agreed. Same with Danielle Smith. If there was 10 years of cancel culture and silence happening, then why were you able to say half of the shit that you've said this entire time? Same with the fucking PragerUs and the fucking Daily Wires of the world. If you weren't able to speak because of political correctness and woke whatever you want to say, then why are you still fucking chatting? Why aren't you in the gulag?
you can have some robust debate, mix it up a little bit, but that you ultimately have all sides represented. And I think, again, you're getting there faster in America, maybe because you do have a bit more of a free enterprise media model. In Canada, because our media has been seeing a huge loss of revenues due to the advertising revenues going online, they've resorted to going to the government to get support. And anytime you have to rely on the government for support, I think that there's maybe a little bit of self-editing that goes along, and maybe a little self-censorship. But because we still have the alternative media, I think that that is allowing.
Wow, I wonder if, for example, maybe if bills like Bill C-11 or Bill C-18 could have helped with that at all. And maybe if billionaires on certain websites and certain fucking applications and Google and fucking Mark Zucker turd didn't meddle in our fucking Canadian policies and write their own amendments and shit, maybe they would have advertising money to be able to thrive off of Danielle Smith.
Us to continue to have a full range of views represented. I can see, though, why you think that it's moving in the wrong direction. There is legislation that came forward in the previous government that would regulate not just speech on radio and television, but also the podcasters and those on the internet. And it never got enacted so that we could see exactly what that would mean. But that was the fear, is that individuals would be deplatformed if they broke the political speech codes. And we're in the middle of an election right now, and I'm sure that once we get that resolved, we'll see whether or not that kind of legislation comes back or whether it's gone.
Premier, where do you get your values from? You're obviously very strong. I opened up with this statement that your team calls you the new Iron Lady.
I would say the Necromonicon is where she gets her values from.
Maybe we can hear about your background a little bit. How did you become this new Iron Lady to your team?
Well, it probably goes back to dinner table conversations with mom and dad. I do tell a story about when I was in I was in junior high school social studies class, and I came home because my prof was talking about the Soviet Union, and he seemed to be talking about it in a way that communism was a positive ideology and a positive system. And my dad, who has Ukrainian heritage, he knew about the Holodomor, and he didn't appreciate that his daughter was being indoctrinated that way. So he went and yelled at the teacher, and then realized we had to talk more about politics around the table. And so I got a lot of my exposure to political issues through dinner table conversations. I realized pretty early on, sadly, that there wasn't that balance in the social studies classes and K-12 education. I sought out political.
Chatter says, I was going to make a joke that she would say the Black Book of Communism. Then she actually said that. Yeah, she's unfortunately she's pretty textbook when it comes to conservatives and their outlook, both American wise and Canadian wise. Yeah. Yeah. She's kind of basic that way.
political science classes and economics classes when I got to university, but I really got involved in politics when it was my first opportunity to vote, 1992, and there was a lot of things going on, federal elections and provincial elections and leadership contests and referendums. And so I gravitated towards the Conservative Campus Club, and I've been involved in conservative politics ever since.
Where does a young Canadian go for free enterprise ideas?
I am somebody who grew up with very conservative family members who also worked in conservative politics in Canada, and I am a raging leftist. So it was a choice, and she made the wrong one.
Well, my pathway was after I finished my English degree, I went back to school for an economics degree, and I discovered the Fraser Institute. And the Fraser Institute is a little bit like your Cato
Oh my god, she does want to be fucking Margaret Thatcher. Holy fuck.
Institute. So they are their adage at the time was seeking free market solutions to public policy problems. So they would take a problem that you were grappling with in government and see if there was a way to be able to use free enterprise or free markets or internal markets or market mechanisms, competition, price transparency in order to be able to solve problems. So I had a chance to intern there after I was done university. And
Fraser Institute. Damn, I knew she was a clown. Yeah, she very much is. Yeah, she is a big old fucking clown.
I've maintained a lifelong association with them, but they are our preeminent free enterprise think tank and have fostered a lot of other think tanks and other groups that have come out of it, including after I left their internship, they helped me with setting up the Canadian Property Rights Research Institute. So I got a bit of a grounding in some advocacy back then as well. But there are a few organizations like them. We have a Canadian Taxpayers Federation, which is I think a little bit like I think you've got a National Taxpayers Union. So I think we've got a few similar types of organizations. We're a smaller country, so we've got a fewer number of them, but there is at least still
smaller by population, but second biggest landmass in the fucking world, bitches.
Some organizations that are able to do that independent work.
So explain to an American, how does the government system in Canada work?
Say it very slowly for her, Danielle Smith. Sorry, Americans watching. Say it very slowly for her, Danielle Smith.
I have tried to explain this because I know people were taken a bit by surprise that we were right in the middle of an election.
Yeah, there's an election in late April. To us, it seems like out of nowhere.
Yes, and I know that there was some thought that perhaps the former prime minister was hanging on and he wasn't really going to leave. Well, I'll tell you, I've been thinking about how I could describe it in a way that the Americans might appreciate. It would be like having
Okay, so she's not going to explain at all that we have a Westminster style parliamentary system. I mean, I'm sure those would be too big of words for an American, a red-blooded American to understand, but you could at least explain how the fucking government works. I mean, I hope she does. I'm kind of interrupting her mid-thought, but judging by how much fucking, look at her face, Republican makeup she has on, I'm not surprised by that.
Your sitting president be able to have the decision to tell Congress, you're not sitting anymore for 4 months. We're just going to suspend Congress, and then we're going to finish our primary. And then as soon as the person won the primary, they immediately became the president, and then they had the ability to choose when the election was. That's what's happened in our system. So our system.
Yeah, that's called a leadership race. Maybe you should lead with that instead of making it sound so scary and democratic, because that is something that has happened many times throughout our Canadian history. Literally, that's how Justin Trudeau, Pierre Trudeau's father, was what happened to him and how he retired and then was replaced by another liberal MP, and then they had an election shortly after that, because that's usually what happens when you do a leadership race. They almost always call an election immediately afterwards.
allows for the prime minister to suspend the parliament so that the debate is suspended, to do the election call for the nomination to replace him, and then the replacement becomes the prime minister right away, and then they can time the election.
It sounds like an immense amount of control that the one person has.
It is.
It's almost funny that they call Donald Trump a dictator when you're describing to me that you basically have a system that almost allows for ultimate power.
It's
So Danielle Smith is just going to, you know, go along with this whole like misinformation rhetoric that, you know, this is an undemocratic choice, and you know, just fucking push down on the fucking gas pedal of that. Lordy Lou, and I don't even know her name, Michelle, the fucking PragerU Barbie, being like, oh, well, and they call Donald Trump a dictator. Yeah, Donald Trump is still there, and he's debating on having a third term, which you can't have in America. Justin Trudeau left. He's not in office anymore. Like that, this is the complete opposite of a fucking dictatorship. But whatever, okay, believe whatever you want, fucking Republican Barbie. Sorry, PragerU Barbie.
The American system, I believe, because remember, we have a similar heritage. We both have a British heritage, whereas the Americans, they decided they wanted to go a different pathway. Canadians decided to maintain their relationship with the crown. So I think what happened in the U.S. is they said, we don't want our system to become like that one that we just escaped from. And so they put a lot of different checks to make sure that you couldn't very easily make decisions. So I think it's why your Congress gets elected every 2 years, and then you've got a separate level of government, your Senate that gets elected every 6 years and are quite powerful, and then you've got the president, which is separate from the House.
So you're going to explain how American politics work, but just rhetoric when it comes to Canadian. Okay, I see what you're doing there, Danielle Smith.
House leadership. In Canada, all of that is integrated. So in order to become a prime minister or even a premier, you have to win the most number of seats. But in doing so, then you also are able to help have great influence on the legislative agenda as well. And the Senate in our system is not elected. And so it's appointed as well by the prime minister.
Wow.
And so that's one more way in which you have way more independence in the U.S. system. The good news is that when you've gotten to a situation,
American women can't have abortions in like almost all of their states. But we don't have independence? Okay, whatever.
Situation like both of our countries have, where there's way too much bureaucracy, where government is way too big. In our system of government, in some ways it's easier to be able to pass policies, to be able to unwind that. In your government, I guess you're just discovering whether you can. We're seeing whether the executive orders are going to stand, or whether they can be struck down by the courts, or whether they can be overridden by the Congress. So I'm watching that with great interest.
Yes, it's difficult to undo the damage of.
By the way, for Canadians watching, we have a Supreme Court too. Like, there are checks and balances here too. What the fuck? Danielle Smith wants to be American and just wants to peddle to Americans so fucking much. Holy fuck.
The government, when you have so many heads, and there's a lot of convolution where several programs will be taken over by multiple departments. And so when something goes wrong, guess who is being blamed? Both sides, right? So,
but that explains why we're a little bit different in our system. But you do have some innovation, I think, that is happening in how artificial intelligence might be used to analyze government spending and be able to look through a vast.
Reminder: this is the premier who was going against treaty land and decided to start planning a AI cooling station in treaty territory. So she loves American AI. And it wouldn't even be a Canadian company too. It would be an American company. An American AI company. Ugh.
Volume of records and identify spending that may no longer be in sync with the direction that your administration's going. So I'm watching that process with interest too, to see if there's something we can learn from it as well.
Yeah, it is always an exciting thing to me when I hear that the government is willing to take steps to shrink it.
So you want Elon Musk to come up here too and start firing hundreds of thousands of fucking government employees? You think that's a good thing? Okay, Danielle Smith, whatever you fucking say.
Itself.
Mm-hmm.
So
It's not a usual thing.
not a usual thing.
And it goes against what the bureaucracy wants to do as well. I mean,
Of
one of the
course.
things that I learned about back when I was studying Ronald Reagan's time in office and Margaret Thatcher's time in office, I think there was a
Yeah, yeah. Like you said, Trudeau is a dictator in comparison to Donald fucking Trump. God.
term for it called the Smithsonian problem. That if you went to the agency that was in charge of museums and you said, well, tell us where to cut, they'd say, oh my goodness, well, of course we have to shut down the Smithsonian on evenings and on weekends, and we have to put our collections away. Like, what is the most painful possible way to execute the cut so that the politicians wouldn't dare do it? And we've gone through an exercise of trying to do that, and I've seen that as well, is that I think that bureaucracies are just designed to grow. I think that they're motivated by having more people, more money, more influence, more programs. And so it really is up to the politicians to find a way to identify the things that aren't working anymore and redirect those dollars to the priorities of the day. I don't know that anyone's found a perfect solution to that, but at least people are trying.
Well, as Ronald Reagan would say, the government is not the solution. The government is the problem.
It's my death rattle as I'm hearing people unironically quoting Ronald Reagan as if he was at all good for America or the world. Like in Canada, we in Canada are still dealing with the we are still dealing with the consequences. Sorry, I'm having a dyslexic moment. I couldn't get that word out. With a fucking with the fucking Ronald Reagan presidency. Like a lot of our policies during the 80s were heavily associated with what was going on in the States. There was a lot of like intertwinedness between the two, and it just is so fucking ugh. It's exhausting listening to them talk about Reagan in a positive way. Chatter says the government is the problem. Ronald Reagan, head of the government. Exactly. Exactly. Exactly.
And whenever we have elected officials, again, who are willing to recognize that more power to the government means less power to the people, then I think we get very excited. And I think this era of social
And by people, because they're in America, they mean corporations, because corporations are legally people down there.
media, of being able to actually convey that there are people who are stepping into leadership and are willing to give citizens more and stop taking so much away from us. This is what we're starting to see around the world. What are things that your followers in Alberta, your constituency in Alberta, what are the things that they're very focused on right now?
Yeah.
What's concerning?
Okay, I'm curious to see what Danielle Smith says. It's probably just going to be about big oil, not gonna lie, and the the Alberta economy. But while she starts yapping about that, I'm gonna go blow my nose again because allergy season.
To them.
I'd be happy to answer that. I should probably just tell you where we're located, because if you've got an American audience, you just to understand a little bit about our structure. So Alberta is a subnational government in the same way that a state is a subnational government, and we're located just above Montana. I kind of like to describe us as the Texas of the North. That we've got, I think, similar character.
Oh, so you'll explain how provinces work, but you won't explain how our fucking government works. Okay.
A little bit of an independent streak.
That's why I like you.
But we also have a similar kind of economy. We, when I think of Texas, I think of cattle, and I think of oil, and that's what we've got too. A big cattle industry.
Did I not say she'd talk about big oil? Chatter says it's like when Thatcher said, "There is no such thing as society." Then join the Royal Society. Yeah, pretty much. Damn, this chatter's going for the fucking throat when it comes to fucking Reagan and Thatcher. I love it. More, please.
Industry, big farming business. We've got timber, we've got oil, we've got gas, and we've got a free enterprise attitude. We want to make sure that we're creating an environment to attract business. We believe in our wealth creators. I always celebrate our wealth creators, because what I have found with our wealth creators, not only do they generate money for government, but they also generate great jobs for people. And when they do well, they're our biggest philanthropists. They support some of the best causes. And so you'll sometimes find in more progressive politics that the first thing they go after is the wealth creators. And one of the things you'll find in Alberta is that we're the exact opposite. We celebrate entrepreneurship and celebrate that innovation. And so what we're concerned about right now is we want to get more of our energy to market. The Americans are one of are actually our biggest customer. It used to be our only customer. And one of the things that makes Canada a bit unique is I know that in the US, most of your government-owned land is owned federally through your Bureau of Land Management. It's the reverse in Canada.
CEO, wealth creator. Yeah, because that's the only people Danielle Smith fucking cares about. It's not the tiny little independent, petty bourgeois, small business owners. It's just the big ass CEOs of Exxon and all those other fucking oil companies.
Most of the land and the resources are owned at the subnational level by the province. And so when I tell you that we've got 1.8 trillion barrels of oil, of which 165 billion is recoverable at today's technology, and 1.36 quadrillion cubic.
Danielle Smith is also like excruciatingly anti-environmental programs. So it's going to be politician cringe creator. Yeah, pretty much. But yeah, so Danielle Smith is like super obsessed with oil and hates environmental programs. So I guarantee she's probably going to be praising Donald Trump for all of the EPA cuts and everything else, and say that she wants to do that here in Canada too. And I'm curious to see if she talks about Per Polyev at all, because part of the scandal before she even went down to the States to go talk to PragerU was her comparing Per Polyev to Trump, something that he is trying to distance himself from, because everybody in fucking Canada, including conservatives, are terrified and upset with Trump and don't want anybody who's associated with him to be in office.
Cubic feet of gas, of which 140 trillion cubic feet are recoverable with today's technology. We have the ability to market that to the world. We've been stymied on being able to do that because of our federal government. They've got the ability to just sort of like your government, be able to say yes and no to certain projects. But we're also very concerned about tariffs and what that means for our trade relationship with the United States, which has historically been so great, and we want it to be great again.
You know, it's interesting as you bring up Ottawa and the fact that your province actually has control over
Ottawa. Americans are so weird. Ottawa.
for the oil. I'd imagine that leads to some conflict with your federal government, given that it's in your best interest to make sure that you do produce oil, but Ottawa is basically stagnating that.
Yeah.
Am I right?
Well, look at where we've been in the last 10 years. Because even in the United States, when you look at the Paris Accord.
Ottawa. Instead of Ottawa. Ottawa.
Accord being signed, whether it was through your previous administration or the Democrat administration before. We've had that same parallel in Canada. We've seen that same parallel internationally, where there was this idea that you could power an industrial economy on solar power and wind power and batteries. And I think now what we've seen with the lack of reliability, with the failure of some power grids, with the affordability crisis and inflation crisis, with the
you mean failure of power grids because of your choices, Daniel Smith? Is that what you're referring to? Very curious to see what you mean. Okay, but why? Cheddar says, okay, but why do towns in Ontario all sound like tourist traps? People who mistake them for a name on flight tickets. Because they're named after indigenous words. So Ottawa is an indigenous word, and that is why.
Invasion of Ukraine and instability in the Middle East, everyone's realizing energy is pretty important, and we actually need to.
Oh, you mean like London? Yeah, it's because we British. We used to be British, so we need to have places like London, Ontario, or Scarborough, where I'm from, and places like that. It's to make us feel like we're even closer to the crown and good old England and the people who still technically own our country than we actually are. Good question, though.
More of it. That's one part. The other part is that we realize that it's not fair to the 5 billion people on the planet who don't enjoy the same quality of living that we do. That we've got to also address energy poverty at the same time as we're addressing environmental issues. So I would say that has been a.
Oh, she's on the cusp of complaining about it. She's already starting.
Rapid change, and maybe it was with the election of the U.S. president that everybody finally woke up and said, wait a minute, we've got to rethink how we're addressing this energy picture. But there's no question, for the last 10 years, it's been very difficult for us to get pipelines approved, pipelines built, to get capital coming into big projects. In fact, in our province, there was some $278 billion worth of projects that were canceled.
By whom?
Because of federal regulatory processes that made it so difficult to get to a yes. So that, I think, is one of the things that the U.S. Government down here is trying to deal with, is with Doug Burgum and the Interior Secretary being responsible now for that Energy Dominance Committee. It's what are the different agencies that have the power to say no? Mm-hmm. Bring them under.
Okay, she's so close to talking about the EPA too.
One umbrella, and let's see how we can get to yes. So we're now moving in that same direction to try to get a similar process going in Canada, or a little further behind, but at least there has finally been a recognition that oil and gas are here to stay. We shouldn't be looking at reducing production. We should be looking.
But they're not renewables. They're not renewables, though. They're not here to stay. They're finite. Cheddar's asking, doesn't Doug Burgum want to harm Indigenous reserves into oil fields, or turn Indigenous reserves into oil fields? Yeah, he does. And so does Danielle Smith. That's exactly what she wants to do with pipelines and why they have been stopped. Yeah, Doug Burnham is just the fucking worst. And he does not give a fuck about the Indigenous population in America or their fresh water or anything like that.
Looking at reducing the impact on the environment, reducing emissions, and that's been the message that I've been trying to say for the last few years, and I think it's finally breaking through.
Well, when we first set up this interview, it was several months ago, and really my whole intention was to talk to you about energy and what a great opportunity it would be for our country, the United States, and your country, Canada, to work hand in hand on getting away from this environmentalist religion that makes no sense and is really anti-human. And I'm going to go in a little bit.
Environmentalism is anti-human. Okay. I'd love to hear y'all's opinion on it when the sky is orange again from all the fucking wildfires. Talk about how fucking inhuman environmentalism is in comparison to everything BlackRock and Exxon and every other fucking oil monger is doing. Holy fuck.
bit into a rant and a little, somewhat of a confession that when I ran a school, and actually I taught fourth, fifth grade, I taught in Al Gore's Inconvenient Truth.
Oh,
There was a curriculum that was handed to the teachers. Essentially, we were told as teachers, if you love the earth, you need to tell kids that fossil fuels are horrible, right? And I didn't know to question that. I was in my 20s. And so I, in fact, taught that curriculum. And years later, I got educated. And now I understand that there is no modern life without fossil
yeah.
fuels. And it would be great.
Okay. I mean, what did humans do prior to fossil fuels? There was water, there was steam, there was renewable shit that they were doing. No, no, no. It has to be oil. Has to be oil. God fucking damn it. These people are so fucking big oil pilled. I'll be right back. I gotta wrap something.
To get energy from nuclear energy, but those things are years and years away from us. Not to mention energy is not just electricity, right? It's agriculture, it's everything else. But as Americans, for years we've been teaching the population that we can go to net zero.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd imagine it would be the same situation in Canada. And so the constituency is voting itself out of existence, really out of modern existence, by deciding to share a narrative that is not just a lie, but is actually a dangerous lie. And so I'm really curious, are Canadians
Any more dangerous than literally all of the side effects of global, like, the global climate crisis? Like, what the absolute fuck? God, these people. I mean, I know PragerU is paid for by big oil, but like, holy fuck, these people are so brainwashed.
really waking up to this environmentalist religion that is hurting itself?
I would say that there
Something that like, calling environmentalism a religion is something that like, Jordan Peterson is very famous for doing.
we're caught a little bit between the new approach in the United States and the historic approach in Europe, because we do have that history of being connected to Europe. We still have a lot of work to do to convince European allies that they need natural gas. I think they've begun to realize that because they were so dependent on Russia, but they still have policies in place that make it difficult to develop natural gas and use natural gas. So I think with the upcoming G7 meeting in June, we're going to be looking to see if the world is going to take a strong statement that energy security and energy affordability has to be job one, and we work on the environmental issues as technology becomes available. We're in a good position in Alberta because we started to develop some of those technologies that can reduce emissions. So we have used carbon capture, utilization, and storage. If you've actually got a concentrated CO2 stream, you can catch it.
Woke. I'm kidding, but like.
And then you can sequester it underground. It carbonizes after a couple of years, and so it stays stored. You can also take the CO2 and
Carbon capture, by the way, is not a great, you know, not a great retaliatory measure to climate change and like big oil and shit like that. It does not really do much, and it's just kind of a another version of just like greenwashing when it comes to like big oil and oil production.
use it for useful products. We've been using it for enhanced oil recovery. And so that's what we have found, is that we've got pore space to allow for carbon capture. We have a number of companies that are invested in doing so. So we've got the very first petrochemical company that is going to be net zero. So they capture the CO2, bury it underground, and use the hydrogen as a fuel source. We've got net zero hydrogen projects that have developed.
Chatter says, here in Norway, we have enough hydropower for the entire country, but the government is run by people without heads, and so private corporations just export it all and buy cheap gas from Germany. It's so frustrating. Yeah, we get a lot of that here. Like, a lot of the oil that's produced by Danielle Smith goes to fucking America. And beyond that, we have a lot of like electricity, like wind farms and solar farms here too. And a lot of that is also going to America, or is going to only big metropolitan areas and not the communities that are like producing that said energy as well.
We have a cement company, Heidelberg, that is doing the same thing, capturing the CO2 at source, burying it, and they're embedding it into the cement to make a stronger, more durable cement. So I would say that those kind of innovations, since they're coming from the market, they found consumers who are interested in buying those products. They have found investors willing to invest in those products. That's the way innovation should work. And as a result, I think we're finding a bit of a pathway where we are getting back to understanding that you need to have oil and gas in its traditional forms. You have to have innovation at a pace that makes sense so that you're not stranding assets. And maybe if you give a long enough time frame, maybe you can have your oil and gas without having the same emissions profile. So those are the things that I'm seeing. I'm keeping an open mind about it, but I would say that Canada is a little bit caught in the middle of we're not quite where the Americans are, but we're moving away from, I think, the really strident views that we've seen in Europe.
How reliant is Canada on the economy that Alberta creates?
I would say very reliant. We're not the largest economy, but the way our system of government works is that we have a federal government that takes a lot of money. And then when they have more than they need, they transfer it to other provinces. And so when we calculated those transfers, Alberta has literally transferred hundreds of billions of dollars, and other jurisdictions have received hundreds of billions of dollars. But that we don't get a thank you card in the mail.
I was
for
going to
any
ask
of
you
that.
about that. Where are the flowers?
we in fact
In fact, the largest economy in Canada comes from Ontario, bitch, says where I'm from. Ontario for the win. Ontario for the win. Even though, good things don't grow in Ontario, as they say.
some ways, it's one of those things. Canadians are a little bit modest. They don't want people to brag. If you tell people too much about how well you're doing, it can create a little bit of resentment. So we've been quietly, but increasingly more loudly over the years, reminding our fellow compatriots just how reliant they are on us. Because when you do see this problem of limitation of being able to continue to develop your economy, it's harming your citizens. You're not able to create those jobs, and then you're still expected to support those transfers. That creates its own tension. And so the nice part is that our fellow premiers now understand that part of the reason Alberta has become so reliant on the United States is they wouldn't let us build pipelines east and west and north. And so it's creating a different conversation. We would.
Oh, you mean pipelines that the Indigenous population don't want, and that would go right next to the fucking St. Lawrence River, which runs into Lake Ontario, where a lot of people get their fucking fresh water from? The Great Lakes? The Great Lakes that America also wants for their fucking fresh water? God damn it. God damn it. Yeah, sure, let's build a big old fucking pipeline all the way across fucking Canada and completely destroy all of our fucking fresh water. Let's do that. Indigenous people, nah, don't even know them.
Love to build more pipelines to the U.S. and build them south. But I think we're now opening up a conversation where we'll be able to build them in all directions and then be able to open up more markets.
What is happening with the Keystone Pipeline?
The Keystone Pipeline, again, this is one of the things that we've been frustrated about, because your politics do kind of whipsaw back and forth a bit, depending on who is in the White House.
Yeah, the beautiful battle of America.
It was a beautiful battle, and there's sometimes collateral damage, and my province was collateral damage that time. We were very excited about what would have been a $15 billion project to connect the largest source of heavy oil with the largest refining capacity of heavy oil in the Texas Gulf Coast. And we were well underway. Our province had actually helped to try to de-risk that by putting money in. And then I think 5 minutes after Joe Biden got elected, he canceled it. And so we and your court in Montana made us tear up all the pipeline so that I guess to sort of cement that it
Damn, yeah, if it's 1 a.m., go to bed, chatter. Thank you for hanging out though. It's nice talking to you. Good to learn about Norway. Have a good one.
Couldn't be built along that route again. And so when the US president came in and expressed an interest, what I think what happened in Canada is we said, okay, well, let's just take the idea of connecting the heavy oil supply with the refineries and see if there's a different route, a route that might be easier to do, that might be faster. Maybe we can twin it along an existing line. Maybe there is some way that we can streamline the process. And I can tell you our industry has found many, many projects that we would be able to do that with once we get over the tariff war.
Yes.
As soon as we can get back to the table and have the conversation about how we can work together, I think that there's a real opportunity. What I worry about is if this tariff war continues on too long, if it creates too much harm to American citizens. And
is she going to bring up the election? Is she going to bring up? No, she's just only going to talk about Americans. I'm curious to see what happens here.
As a result, the US president loses the midterms, then I think it sets all of that back. I think there's a window for us to be able to work together on this, but I don't know that it's going to be a window that lasts the entire presidency if this tariff war continues the entire presidency.
Well, I'm sure Canadians are incredibly upset about the tariffs.
Yeah.
And, Americans are starting to ask serious questions about how much should America take on when it comes to the rest of the world. And so the concept of America first is to look at everything and basically say, look, we are the biggest consumer of virtually everything around the world. We're that giant gorilla. And so we get to negotiate.
Yeah.
And, as many people around the world know, our president knows how to negotiate.
Yeah.
And he also knows who he's negotiating for, the American people. And we're big, big consumers. And
I didn't know the American people meant Elon Musk and big oil. I didn't know.
So I totally understand how for our friends, I wouldn't even, because I don't think Canada is necessarily adversarial, and especially not those of you in Alberta.
Yeah.
I totally understand the reaction of tariffs. I remember having the reaction on tariffs when it came to dairy. Why do American products have to be tariffed at over 240%? That has nothing to do with Alberta. That has to do with other provinces. And so I don't know that Americans are necessarily so upset with our president, because we just feel like there's somebody who's fighting for us and showing up for us. And so that's my personal reaction to it.
It's really unfortunate that we have a few of those areas where there's a very high tariff, because I think it gives the impression to Americans that that's the relationship across all goods.
Right.
And it isn't. I
mean,
it
seems unfair.
There's 98% of all goods that go between Canada and the US are tariff-free. There's zero tariff. There are a few of those historical areas because in Canada, I think every nation responds to food insecurity.
Okay, I'm going to go blow my nose and keep this playing. I'll be right back.
A different way.
Yes.
Every nation responds to its farming community a different way, because it's not like a traditional business. When a business goes under, they just, capital reformulates and they just start a business elsewhere.
Yeah.
When a farm goes under, that destroys a family and it destroys a community. And we have a lot of very small farmers that we want to make sure that they can remain vibrant. So that's part of why dairy, chickens, eggs are treated a little bit differently, is it's that viability question. I think Americans do the same thing. There's a lot of subsidy that goes to corn farmers, for instance, and I think sugar farmers as well. And so I think that there's probably a similar calculation. Right. And so I would look at those as match for match. But on everything else, it is, we have to look at what the different irritants are and then deal with them one by one. What I think the Americans should be concerned about is was an image. I know PragerU is really good with images. I wish I had brought this one because
no, they're not.
I got it last time I was down in the US. It was an image from an Economist article about when America in 2001, it looked at China versus America. Who was the principal trading partner back in 2001? And it colored all the nations that had America first in blue and all of China's in red. And most of the world was blue. And by 2021, most of the world's red. Most of the world has a stronger trading relationship with China than the United States, with the exception of Canada and Mexico. So Canada and Mexico have stayed loyal friends all through that period of time.
This being the bitch who wanted to literally kick Mexico out of the Canada-US-Mexico trade deal and just make it the Canada-America deal to try to appease Daddy Trump at the beginning of all this fucking madness.
Time. And so that's why it's a bit confusing for Canadians to think.
Saying she 1000% agreed with Doug Ford back when he was still a blubbering buffoon in the eyes of everybody before fucking Donald Trump turned him into fucking Canada's golden boy. I mean, not entirely. Everybody still hates fucking Doug Ford, but still.
We are already in a partnership in North America that benefits all parties. We're contributing to American energy dominance. We're contributing to the wealth of America because we buy more products from America than anyone else in the world. Even though we're a tiny population, we're 1/10 your size. We buy more goods than any other country.
And still a bigger fucking landmass, bitches. Remember that. Second biggest landmass in the world, behind Russia.
Country in the world. And so we would have thought that we would have been the last on the list as opposed to the first on the list for tariffs. And I think that's what's caused a little bit of confusion for Canadians is now that we find ourselves here, we've had this incredible tariff-free relationship on virtually everything. How do we get back to that as quickly as possible? Because I think as soon as we do, I think the US has a lot bigger fish to fry with a lot more problematic trade partners than Canada.
Do you think, given our freedom-loving approach, there's a world we can live in where there are no tariffs on the Canadian side and the American side?
I think we should work towards that. Here's the thing. I think it has to be of parity for parity. If it's parity for parity, then we're already there on most of our goods. I know that there are additional issues that the U.S. president has identified from a strategic point of view. I understand why a nation wants.
I'm sorry, excuse me? The way that the PragerU Barbie said it was like as if Canada was the one who started this trade war, which is not true. And Danielle Smith, are you about to be on Trump's side about this again? Better tread carefully there, Danielle.
To be able to develop their own steel and aluminum industry. But there's probably an easier pathway and a hard pathway. Right now, Americans don't produce much aluminum at all and get 60% from Canada. So when you add a 25% tariff on that, it's just going to make it harder for the people who need to use aluminum to make products. And it's just going to increase the cost for the businesses and increase the cost for consumers. So there might be a better way to achieve that outcome. When you look at the auto industry is so integrated and has been since the 1960s. And you've got companies that provide auto parts who operate in Canada, the US, and Mexico. They make decisions on where they locate for a variety of different factors. Some of them are investing up to $200 million to site a place that's making, whether it's car seats or car mirrors. And you can't just up and lift all of that and move it back to Michigan or that area. And so there's sort of the tariffs in the short term are just going to make cars more expensive for Americans because they.
Okay, tread a little lighter there. Tread a little lighter there. Yeah. Still ain't sounding very much Canada first there, though.
The parts go back and forth across the border 8 times before a finished car is done. So I understand why those kinds of industries are important, but in the short term, it's really just going to hurt the industry and it's going to hurt consumers. And so we have to figure out, is there a way that we can address some of the issues that the president has, obviously wanting to see more of those products produced in America without capsizing the industry in the meantime.
More jobs here, more independence here. And I think we're realizing that the world is changing very quickly.
Yeah.
We can no longer be America fat and lazy while China is, eager and hungry.
Yeah.
And so those are the things that, we're all
Aren't there like literal like advertisements in parts of Asia that are like, you can send $5 a day to an American child and feed them? I'm pretty sure you guys are the ones who are starving for the most part too.
Paying attention to right now, as I'm sure folks in Alberta too
Yeah.
are paying attention. You want your independence. You want some self-reliance, right? I think that is the message across the world that we want from leadership, is that we want to be able to stand on our own feet,
Yeah.
right? And in the same way that you want to be able to have your Albertans be able to stand on their own feet and not necessarily rely on some of the regulations that are coming out from that your supporters don't agree with.
The argument that seems to be breaking through a bit is the argument around raw materials. I mean, I went back because I know the president likes President McKinley, because prior to getting into that position in the 1890s, he was a big advocate of tariffs. But my read on that period of time is that even President McKinley realized that you shouldn't have tariffs on raw materials and intermediate goods, because it's the finished product that you're wanting to get the value added on. That's where the high paying jobs are. And you do need to have the raw materials. If you need to have oil and gas, you need to be able to have uranium. You need to be able to have, I think there's like 30.
Literally trying to appeal to Trump through his weird Gilded Age obsessions with tariffs. Damn, Danielle, you are so cucked by America.
4 critical minerals, of which Canada has all of them, and the Americans are perfectly situated to have us be the principal supplier to them, which is vitally important when you look around the world and see how much of the supply chain China has wrapped up with the kind of approach that they've taken. So that's, again, one of the reasons why Canada is here saying, hey, we're the answer. We can provide you the raw materials that you're going to need to be able to build out those great American products. And we'll also buy them once you've produced them, because we historically have done so. That I think increasingly, I think we've made that case on energy products, but I think you can make it on food products as well. We have 300,000 head of cattle that come across the border. A lot of your slaughterhouse capacity is built on being able to have that live cattle come across. We have a number of grain products for biofuels, especially canola, because biofuels are becoming an increasing part of the chain. That is also a way in which the value added happens here from our raw products. Potash, you get I think 85% of the supply of potash, which goes to creating food, comes from Canada.
I'm shocked you even brought up potash, considering the fact that it primarily goes through New Brunswick and not fucking Alberta, but okay.
We have uranium. 20% of the world supply of uranium comes from Canada. The other options are Kazakhstan and Russia. So I think we've got a value proposition, but it seems like we're not able to get to that conversation about all of the great relationships we have, all of the things that we can have free trade on together. Obviously I know that there's a few of those irritants, but I hope it doesn't damage the whole relationship, because we have a few things that need to be sorted out.
I know that it took quite a bit of stamina for you to come out to the United States during this time. And one of the other things that I admire about your stamina is that you have been fighting for parental rights in your province. Yeah. This is something we also have in common. It has been a major issue to see the onslaught and attack on the innocence of our children when it came to chemically castrating.
Oh my God, she's going to be bringing up the trans stuff. Okay, Danielle Smith is going to have to talk about trans stuff. Okay, here we go.
And physically castrating kids who have been told that they're born in the wrong body. And you have done heroic work in your province on this specific subject. I think there was a bill that you passed. I'd love for you to share some of that.
Sure, I'll tell you about the 3 bills that we did.
Oh, she's going to be talking about the bills that she has passed. Oh my God, the anti-trans bills. Danielle Smith is going to be talking about the anti-trans shit. Oh my God. Here we go. Is real.
And we took a lot of time to consult on this to get the right pathway, because again, when we started down this pathway, there was very little counter commentary in the media, and so we were just understanding that parents want to know what's going on with their kids. And we were seeing some terrible stories that were, you probably saw them on social media as well, of young people who'd made transition.
What about the parents who don't actually want what's best for their kids and they're going to make their queer kids homeless, or the parents who are going to physically abuse their children who are queer? You don't care about those children. You think that la di da everybody's gonna be fucking all peaches and cream when it comes to fucking treating their children properly. No, we live in the real world. There are monsters out there.
Decisions early, sometimes with a trusted adult that wasn't their parent, helping them along the way, and then having regret, and then transitioning
Now, we're
backwards.
talking about 12, 13-year-olds who
Completely.
started taking chemicals with irreversible damage.
There's a case going on that I'm watching right now in California, exactly that, I believe.
So let me get this right. So if cis kids can take puberty blockers because of precocious puberty, totally fine. Nobody gives a fuck. But the second a trans kid decides that they want to take puberty blockers because they don't want to, experience the puberty of a gender that they aren't, that's an issue. Holy fuck. I just can't even with these fucking people.
The young girl began her journey at 13.
Chloe Cole. She's been on our...
Seriously, explain to me the difference between the two. Just genuinely explain to me the difference between the two. I do not understand.
Okay.
So, yeah.
And is now as an adult is looking for retribution, looking for someone to say, I was a child. Why did you let me do these things? And so I was very impacted by that. And I was looking at it through the perspective of a child. We do have a number of restrictions.
Do you think that's only because cognitively you are only capable of thinking through the immaturity of a child, Danielle Smith? Maybe that has something to do with it. Maybe these children are more emotionally mature than you are. Have you ever thought about that, fucking Danielle Smith? Goddamn, I fucking hate this fucking transphobic weirdo
that we put on kids. We don't let kids drink. We don't let them do drugs. We don't let them smoke. We don't let them drive a car. We don't let them sign.
You sure as hell love to let them get married in Alberta, Danielle Smith. Yeah, for people who don't know, Alberta is the capital of child marriages in fucking Canada. So, this bitch here is talking about kids being groomed by fucking green energy learning. Kids are literally being sold off to fucking adult men in child marriages in Alberta. Yeah, you guys care so fucking much about children. Be so for real.
Contracts until they are of an age that they can make a decision and understand the consequences of it. And so we've had some...
You mean like getting married to a fucking 45-year-old, 75-year-old man? Like, come the fuck on, Danielle Smith. You do not give a fuck about children.
Jurisprudence in our country where they've kind of determined when a kid gets to be around 15, 16 years old, they're able to start making some of their medical decisions. And so we decided that we would draw the line that...
So TMI, but I'm like a child of like separation, right? When I was 13, I got to choose where I lived, who I lived with, and I also got to choose my last name. I got to choose if I took my mom and my dad's married last name, or if I got to choose my current last name, or if I got to choose my biological father's last name. Obviously, I went for my last name, which I still have to this fucking day. But I got to make that choice at 13 years old. I do not regret that choice. My parents did not coerce me into making that choice. And it was done via the custody courts, like how they do it here in Ontario. So I don't understand why I can choose my name, my last name, at 13, but other kids in Alberta who are the same age or slightly younger aren't able to choose their name without their parents meddling in that choice. That makes zero fucking sense to me. That makes absolutely zero sense. And some people are going to be like, oh, well, that's different. Oh, well, that's different. No, it's fucking not. It's choosing a name. It is choosing a name. Something that will be with you forever. And I made that choice. I didn't regret it. And I know many other people who would have definitely made that same choice if they were able to choose a given name and a given first name, and would definitely be happy with it at that young of an age without their parents meddling in it.
Anyone who is under age 16, if they want to change their pronouns or their name, that their parents have to approve that, because that,
again, I was 13 years old and I got to choose my name, regardless of what my biological father wanted, my dad who raised me, and my mom wanted. I got to choose my name at 13. So cis kids can choose their names at younger than 16, but trans kids, no. For some reason, they have to be signaled out by assholes like Danielle fucking Smith. Just be so fucking for real. You do not care about these children. You care about winning a culture war, which is very Thatchery of you and very Reagan-esque of you as well, and want to do that and be politically above your political ops rather than actually taking care of people and children in your fucking province. Children who are being married off currently to adult fucking men.
that's the beginning step. As soon as you start locking in some of that social transition, it very often leads to chemical transition. And then ban puberty blockers under age 16, ban surgery.
Not every kid who transitions socially transitions medically. Not every kid, and by medically, I just mean like the chemical versions of it, because obviously they're not getting surgeries at fucking 12 years old, Danielle Smith. It's only social at that age. Do you even know a trans person? I know a few, even though they're less than 1% of our fucking population. I know a few, and that is not how that works. I know a few who had been transitioning since they were very young, like 11 years old. They socially transition at first. That is just how that works.
Surgeries under age 16. And so that's one part of it. The other part of it is making sure that girls and women have the right to compete in sport against other biological girls and women, because we've also been watching as some unfairness has emerged in some sport.
Incredibly unfair.
And so we took a bit of a leap getting out ahead of where some of the other jurisdictions were. But shortly after, the CAS report came out in the United Kingdom, and it was the most comprehensive survey of these kinds of interventions with kids. And they found out that there just isn't really very good long-term studies on what happens to kids who transition early.
That is not true. That is not true. Have you ever talked to a doctor or a fucking mental health professional? That is not true at all. Not at all. It's actually the opposite. Preventing children from being able to transition is more detrimental to their mental health. Something that I don't even believe you even think exists, mental health, Danielle Smith. Holy fuck. Just regurgitating the anti-trans rhetoric from America. Just absolutely horrid.
How many of them continue with it? How many transition back? What is the pathway on that? And that's a pretty dangerous thing to be doing to a young child, is having them make a decision at a very young age that will affect their ability to have kids of their own one day and not have.
Not every person who transitions medically transitions. Most people who transition don't medically transition. Plus, the kids who get on puberty blockers, the same as cis kids who get on puberty blockers, have the exact same chances of having the same impacts from these fucking these medical interventions. And the majority of them, and I know people who have had to take puberty blockers at a young age too, from just having precocious puberty, not being trans, but just precocious puberty. They're people who are still able to have children. I know one who has 4 fucking kids now. So she's just speaking of her fucking ass. Holy fuck, Danielle Smith. Piss up a fucking rope.
Good evidence for it. So we felt we found the right balance, and we're watching to see what the rest of the world ends up doing. But I think there's a number of European countries that already have gone in this direction, and we're just wanting to make sure that innocence of childhood is preserved, the relationship between parents and their kids are preserved.
You mean like the parents who are marrying their children off to adults in your fucking province, Danielle Smith? Alberta being like the #1 province for fucking child marriages in Canada? Oh, no. You just mean the queer kids. The ones that you don't like. Goddamn.
that we're not having any of these kinds of regrets that happen if somebody makes a decision before they're ready.
How are Canadians reacting to this bill?
Well, there was sort of a first emotional reaction from the activists that I kind of expected would happen. But then I think because we tried to find a very reasonable way of arguing it and a very reasonable approach, I think on balance, we've managed to carry the debate. The interesting part is we're the only province who has put forward that menu of options. Some of the other provinces have gone down the pathway of making sure parents are informed if pronouns change. But we thought the most important part was the medical intervention, because that's when it gets permanent. If you start on puberty blockers and you don't go through puberty, you can't have kids. And if you start doing surgeries, those are irreversible. And so we wanted to make sure that we were dealing with the whole package. We don't mind being first on some things. We don't mind doing it.
So I wanted to show this map from a activist in Canada. This is the this is the 2025 Canadian Anti-Trans Risk Assessment Map. And these are all of the provinces. These are all the provinces in red that are at risk. This here for Alberta means that it is a hot zone when it comes to this stuff, okay? There are 3 bills that were passed against trans people, and it is the worst. The second worst being Saskatchewan. Manitoba was, or not Manitoba, New Brunswick was bad too until the Liberal premier was elected. But all of these red provinces are the worst places in Canada when it comes to anti-trans rhetoric. And yeah, look, my province of Ontario is part of this problem too. Doug Ford, when Scott Moe of Saskatchewan and the former New Brunswick premier were starting to push their anti-trans rhetoric and pass bills and policies that were against trans kids, Doug Ford literally was flirting with the idea with his former education minister, Scott Moe, saying that, or Stephen Lecce, sorry, not Scott Moe, Stephen Lecce, Scott Moe, Saskatchewan, saying that they don't want to fall for the trans indoctrination. Oh, they don't want to fall for the rhetoric. Oh, they don't want to, fall for the wokeness. So that's why it's, the lighter salmony red color instead of just freaking bright red, like fucking Alberta here. And Nunavut is the only one that has zero fucking problem with this shit. Like, it is absolutely fucking insane. It is fucking insane just how much the right wing bull from America is just poisoning the well here in Canada. Sorry, I just wanted to bring that up because I thought it was really important.
A few things that are bold, and it seems like our citizens are supporting us.
Ben, do you think that the other premiers, when you speak to them and you talk to them about this bill, are they in disagreement with you? Or are they just too afraid to fight against the religion of transgenderism? That's what I personally call it. I think it's a religion if you're willing to.
What? I'm sorry. So anything that you don't agree with is a religion now? I thought you guys were the pro-religion right weirdos in fucking PragerU. Okay, continue. I would like to see where you're going to go with this thought, fucking PragerU Barbie.
To sacrifice children.
You've seen it here, right? You know that there are certain states that are more open to the kind of ideas that we're talking about, and other states that are less open. Yeah. And I would say that we've got the same dynamic happening in Canada. We're a bit more of a conservative jurisdiction, similar to Saskatchewan. That's our neighboring province. Those two provinces tend to be.
Okay, I literally just showed the map for, at-risk provinces. Let's see where Danielle Smith says is woke.
A little bit more conservative and a little bit more supportive of caution in these kinds of matters and parental rights. But I would say that there's just a different perspective.
Hmm.
Yeah, different political perspective, depending on which subnational government you go to.
It's interesting that you bring up the other states. So,
Literally only 2 provinces, 2 of the and all, basically all of the territories. Like, what the absolute fuck? Almost all of our provinces are at risk. But oh no, we gotta compare it to America. No, Canada, in my opinion, and I've said this before and a lot of people disagree with me, but whatever. Canada, in my opinion, is worse for trans people than fucking America is absolutely insane.
PragerU is run out of California, and Governor Newsom is the governor, and he is very good at listening to what the people are saying.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh my God, Governor, he agrees with you. Gavin Newsom agrees with you. He's also tired of the fucking the men in girls basketball bullshit. Also, why are grown men in children's basketball? Like that's how that rhetoric sounds. It sounds so stupid. It's just fear-mongery. He agrees with you. He fucking agrees with you. Oh my God. He agrees with you.
And so suddenly now Governor Newsom is saying, well, I actually don't think it's fair that a woman is forced to fight or compete, that a woman.
Wow, I'm shocked she even brought that up.
A young woman is supposed to compete against another man, essentially, or a transgender man in sports. And so what has happened.
Isn't that what you want? Don't you want the people who were born like women to be put into women's sports? Like, I don't understand. Like listening to a right-wing nut job in America talk about this stuff is like listening to somebody speaking a fucking different language talking about this stuff. Trans men were formerly women, so wouldn't you want them to be fighting against women? Or do you mean like I don't even know. I don't even know what the fuck they mean anymore.
Is, I think in the United States, now that the media is freer and parents can actually speak and they can actually hear the truth, the governors are starting to follow, and they're saying, wait a second, the lobbyists are becoming less powerful than the people because the people are starting to speak up. And so even Governor Newsom from California is hearing the people and less lobbyists, and is starting to shift his messaging. And so the bold and the brave who run against the herd,
I'm going to let her cook for a minute,
are going to win. You mark my word.
Well, this is why thought leadership is so important, really. I mean, it's why it's funny that you say Prager University is located in California, because the institute that I work for, that Free Enterprise Institute, is located in BC. And BC and California share the same kind of politics.
Oh my God. 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 Look at the map. What fucking color is British Columbia? Pink. It's pink, which means that it is moderate risk. The same as fucking Ontario, the same as Quebec, which has a fucking little warning sign that says imminent risk for further anti-trans development. What the fuck are you talking about, Danielle Smith? Holy fuck. Oh my gosh, she wants to be American so bad. She wants to be American so bad. She doesn't even know what the fuck is going on in her own country. Holy fuck.
So, but that is, I think, why the independent media is important. Independent think tanks are important. The advocacy is important, because the ideas have to at least be out there so they can be debated. And I think reasonable ideas will always win. If you shut down the public square and don't have the debate, then you can't move the dial. And I'm hopeful that more of these kinds of conversations will take place on more issues.
Yeah, and the truth should not be insecure, right? Well, why do you need to shut the truth if it's the truth? If you're not lying, what is it that you're trying to censor?
Yeah, exactly. Well, I mean, I think it is a big political discussion, right? I mean, conservatives like to do things a little bit differently. Conservatives, I believe, I mean, this is what you're seeing with the way we do government in my province, is that we begin by believing that an individual has inherent dignity, and that we want to do whatever we can for human flourishment, for that individual to grow into an independent adult and marry.
I'm sorry, I thought you only cared about big oil, Danielle Smith. I'm shocked you're even mentioning that there are humans in fucking Alberta, to be honest.
and then form a family unit, and then that family unit becomes the social safety net, and then be involved in community, whether that's a church group or a Rotary Club, so that that becomes the first line of defense if something goes wrong in the community. And then government steps in as a last resort, not a first resort.
Oh my gosh, he does want to be fucking Ronald Reagan. Ew.
would say that the ideology on the other side is there a way for government to intervene first? And it seems like there's always this pressure of make it bigger and further away from people. So big, grand national programs so that you don't have what they call a patchwork. But every time you do that, you're just ending up funneling so much money away from tax-paying citizens into big bureaucracies. And you might not even end up solving the problem in the first place. So, but that is the reason, right? Those are the two big ideological poles that keep going back and forth. And maybe we're moving more towards supporting the individual, the family, the community, the free enterpriser, and maybe a little bit further away from the big government solutions. We're trying to move that along.
Yeah, every time people...
Damn, bringing up fucking big government. Damn, Danielle. Do you mean like how your big government decided that they were going to start trying to privatize healthcare in your province by giving it basically away to a super extremist religious group of like hospitals and stuff like that? Do you mean like that? Because I definitely don't think you do.
People want the government to take care of them. They lose their freedom.
They do, and it costs them a lot of money.
Yeah.
And that's I guess the real, because then what happens is if the more you get taxed to pay for the...
I swear to God, if she brings up the welfare state, I am going to fucking die.
programs, then the less...
Obviously in Minecraft, not in real life.
money it leaves you to be able to take care of yourself and your family. So
how do you feel about government health care?
it's funny when you talk about what makes Canada different from the US. We talked about our British parliamentary system, which we retain, but healthcare has been one of those things that Canadians have said, this is a value that we have that is different from the US. So,
okay, you know what? I think I'm going to cut it there. And I think tomorrow I'm going to react to her responding to there's only 15 minutes left. No, okay. So how long is... Okay, I'm gonna watch it. I'm gonna watch it. Oh my God. I'm gonna watch it. Okay. It's only 15 more minutes. I hope my computer can hold this.
in Canada, yep, you have to go in a queue and you have to wait your turn when you need to have a surgery or treatment, but you'd never be in a position where you'd lose your house because you ended up with unpaid medical bills because there's only one payer. So one of the things that is challenging that we have to do as a free enterpriser, and this is one of the things I learned at the Fraser Institute, is that you have to look to have market-like mechanisms. You have to be able to have transparent prices. People should know how much things cost. You have to be able to have...
You mean like how in Canada it costs half as much for healthcare in our single payer system as it does in America, where it costs double in their system to pay for healthcare? Do you mean like that? You mean like how it is literally cheaper? Like the way that we do healthcare in Canada is literally cheaper than it is in America, like twice as cheap as it is to do in America, who have their fucking, free market led healthcare.
Have competition so that those different facilities that are able to do more surgeries or treatments get more patients, get more money. Those who are going to use some of the latest technology.
PragerU, by the way, made a propaganda video against Canadian healthcare, so I am not shocked that PragerU Barbie decided to bring this up.
Those are the kind of things that you want to reward. You want to see more of that innovation. And so those are the things that we're talking about now, is how do we create a structure so that you can have different service providers, single payers. It'd be like having a single insurance program, but have the competition of the different service providers. Let the patients dictate where they want their dollars to go, whether it's to their local doctor or if they need a treatment, and then just see if you can make the market work without having to throw the entire system over. Those are some of the things that we're
I don't believe healthcare should have anything to do with the fucking market. I think that healthcare should just be fucking healthcare, and that people should get their fucking needs met and be taken care of and be fucking healthy. Like, I wouldn't fucking be here if it wasn't for fucking our single payer healthcare system. I am a very accident prone person, unfortunately, and I have gone through so many different medical things where, like, if I was, a child in America, my parents would be beyond bankrupt, or they wouldn't have fucking taken me to the hospital at all, like at all. So the idea that that people are you know, trying to turn healthcare into an enterprise and are trying to, capitalize on just the fundamental needs of people to be healthy and alive is just in fucking sane to me. Just like, and like, I'm not surprised that she is taking all of her fucking healthcare notes from the fucking Fraser Institute. Good lord, ew.
talking.
Yeah, when I think of government healthcare from Canada, I think of really great beginning of life care and probably very good end of life care.
Yeah.
And that middle piece, I think of Canadians coming here to the United States for specialty care if they can afford it. I saw some survey that 42% of Canadians would come to the US to receive care if they could.
No, I would not go to America for care personally. Also, on top of that, like, no. Did you not know about the Underground Railroad of people who were coming to Canada to get fucking cheaper medication because all of your medication is extraordinarily priced because you guys only care about market values and shareholders and not your fucking people in your country? Ew. Just ew. Just oh my god. This is the future that Doug Ford and Danielle Smith and Scott Moe want for Canadians. They want Canadians to have to wait for their insurance companies to decide if the life-saving healthcare their doctors tell them that they need is part of their fucking insurance package and if they can get it or not. That is the life, that is the radicalizing life that they want to force onto Canadians. The same kind of thing that has radicalized people in America, like Luigi Mangione, allegedly, to allegedly be in New York City. Like, what the actual fuck? Oh my god, I can't even. Oh my god, my sister gave birth recently. Do you know how much money she had to pay? $45 fucking dollars for her fucking parking ticket. That's it. She did not have to pay to put her kid on her chest. She did not have to pay for the type of birth that she had. She did not have to pay for the hospital room. She did not have to pay to, deliver the placenta or whatever fucking else people in America have to pay for. Like, just, oh my god. Oh my god, it is so absolutely just disturbing to hear people talk about healthcare like that. And like here in Ontario, in my province, my premier is trying to privatize healthcare, obviously, as well, because he's an evil conservative who just cares about money and not people. And there's a bill called Bill 7, the More Beds Act, that is now making it so that people who want to stay in the healthcare in like in their hospital rooms are being fucking charged thousands of dollars to stay in the hospital beds so that they can get adequate care instead of being moved to long-term care beds where they will just die. Like, what the actual fuck is wrong with these fucking conservatives?
Which is an astonishing number. And so it's one of those things where the government might take care of everybody equally, but everybody might be equally worse off.
I'd like to, one of the things that the US did.
No, not even slightly. Oh my God.
Which I'm really interested in and I'm going to copy is.
I was mauled by a fucking German Shepherd. Do you know how much I had to pay for that? Hello, chatter. Do you know how much I had to pay for being fucking mauled by a German Shepherd in Canada for healthcare? $0. I paid $0 for my treatment after I was fucking attacked by a German fucking Shepherd. Oh, you're from Holland. Nice. I'm in Canada and we're reacting to PragerU in America and American healthcare system, which is horrible. And I hope you guys do not have anything like that in Holland. God damn. Danielle Smith, you were, ugh, I hate Danielle Smith so much.
There was a hospital act that passed. Or came into effect in 2021, where any of the hospitals that receive government money through Medicare or Medicaid have to post their price list of their top 300 surgeries.
Which, by the way, we have incredible corruption in the medical field here in America as well. I'm not saying that the system here is perfect.
There's no perfect system.
No, really?
There is no perfect system. Half of us don't, because of, you know, the healthcare providers that have to go through insurance companies. And so half of us don't know what we're.
You have Americans everywhere? I hope not. I mean, I love Americans. I don't love America.
Paying for either.
Yeah.
But at least there's some competition.
Yes.
Right.
And so we'll probably, that's where we're trying to go. We'll have
competition isn't the point. Why are we focused on the fucking free market, not taking care of people? Oh, my Lord.
Bit of a different system, but we want to try to get that price transparency just so that we can see, because if you have one of the things that is really interesting, because you can have competition even though you have government paying, and I'll give you an example of this. There's a hospital in Ontario called Humber River Hospital, and what they discovered is that if you allow the surgeon to book both the operating rooms at the same time, you can end up doing vastly more surgeries. If you only have one surgery room booked, you can only do 4 or 6 surgeries, because you have to get, clean up and then clean up the room, get your equipment, get the patient ready. But what happens is if you can do both rooms at the same time, you're able to do 14 surgeries in that same block. And so those are the kind of things that you can still innovate. Doesn't matter who the payer is, but that's the kind of innovation that you want to stimulate. We just signed an agreement with Siemens, and Siemens has
Thank you, Chatter. Oh my god, thank you. So this is the difference between how much Canadians pay versus how much Americans pay per person. So in Canada, we only pay 6,000. Yeah, sorry, I had myself muted. My boyfriend's watching TV in the background. I didn't want to be loud. So in Canada, we only pay 6,319 in 2022 per person. In America, they pay $12,555 per person for healthcare. The numbers are there. We pay less for healthcare by far than Americans do. So Danielle Smith is just wrong across the board. And what I was saying with you, Chatter, we were talking about Le Pen in France. Yeah, I heard about that, and I honestly hope that Danielle Smith would be also boosted out and kicked out of politics here in Canada because of how far right she is. America is not doing good. Yeah, America isn't doing good, and politicians like this in my country want us to turn into America, and it's scary and gross, and I don't like it, and I hope that politicians in your country aren't doing the same.
Has been providing our equipment to treat cancer for a number of years. They're now using AI, and what they want to do is use Alberta as a model. This is brand new research, so that they can take the treatment period of time from diagnosis to treatment from 2 weeks down to 2 hours so that you would be able to.
It's a shit show there too. Well, at least we can all be disappointed in our governments together, right?
Go in, get your scan, running through AI. Yeah, you got a problem. Get a doctor to say, yeah, you really got a problem. Let's get you in. And that to me is going to be really exciting to be on the cusp of that. So I think we can do innovation in our system, even though I'm not going to deny them. We've got problems with waiting lists. That's true. But you know where I think government.
Maybe if we like funded our hospitals, there wouldn't be so many wait times. Maybe if we funded our hospitals and made it so that doctors and nurses got paid adequately, and therefore by paying them adequately and giving them, good salaries, it incentivized more doctors and more nurses to be working, we wouldn't have this problem. Instead of, going through the American model and just starving it out until it doesn't work and then pushing privatization on people who don't want privatized healthcare.
In our country can have a real value. And I don't know how you're going to deal with this in the United States, is in the area of mental health and addiction, which has become a real problem for both our countries. And we had some of the highest number of opioid deaths in Alberta, exacerbated because of COVID and some of the addictions of despair.
Yeah, unfortunate. They are paid too much. The people that are having a say, yeah, politicians like this do get paid too much. I would really like it if politicians in my country would be paid minimum wage, and then they would be less incentivized to be all greedy, but it is what it is currently.
And self-medicating that occurred as a result of that. And so what we decided to do is we decided to bring mental health and addiction into our publicly funded system. So no use.
Yeah, they do say a lot, but are not doing anything here too. And when they do say something, they say absolutely all of the wrong things.
Fees, no waiting lists, building out more beds. Because what we were finding, and again, you might see the same thing, is that hospital emergency rooms had become a bit of a one stop for everything. Homeless person, go to the emergency room. Mental health problem, go to the emergency room. Addiction problem, go to the emergency room. But emergency room isn't the best place to treat somebody.
It's like triage.
Yes. And so we're creating an approach where.
Okay. First off, in at least Ontario, I don't know how it works in fucking Alberta, but at least in Ontario, my mom's a mental health worker, and people go to an emergency room because they get checked in, and then they go to the psych ward where they can get treated in a hospital. That is how you do that. That is, yeah, it's in the fucking hospital. Like, maybe if you guys also funded fucking mental health care services, there would be people readily available to help people instead of having one mental health worker try to take care of like half a dozen people. Lol, you have mental health problems. Please stay for 6 months. Sometimes that's how it works, but at least in Canada, they actually get like therapy and treatment. You know what I mean? Like it's not necessarily that bad. Like my like I said, my mom's a mental health worker, so like sometimes she has to take her clients to the hospital, and they actually do help her out.
We're giving people a prescription for Suboxone or Sublocade. That's a replacement for opioids, and allows them to get their brain functioning and clean so that they can start thinking about what their pathway is. Get them into a recovery community for 90 to for up to a year if they need that time to be able to recover and reconnect with their community. We've got recovery communities within our jails. We've got 4 jails where we're treating people on site so they can get clean while they're serving their time. And we're about to move forward with something we call compassionate intervention, which is ordering people into care. That if you
just like taking the bodily autonomy away from people who are struggling with addiction. Like one thing that like a lot of experts say when it comes to dealing with addiction is not forcing people into fucking recovery centers and forcing them to deal with their problems, because that doesn't actually help them. That doesn't cure their issues. That doesn't magically make them not addicted. It does the opposite, actually. It harms them. they need to choose to do it, and they need to. I'm a cook. I don't use drugs. Okay, in Canada, it's the opposite, and I'm sure you're joking, but in Canada, it's the opposite. um, but um, but when it comes to drugs in drug addiction in Canada, like you shouldn't be forcing people to get help. I don't do cigarettes. I do the green flower version, if you catch my drift. Um, but yeah, no, like when it comes to like politicians like Danielle Smith wanting to force people into getting care doesn't help them. It harms them. It is absolutely detrimental to them.
You've got somebody who is causing harm to.
That's why places like safe injection sites exist in the first place, like to fucking help these people and to give them the choice to go and take care of themselves and the ability to, if they are going to continue to use drugs, do it safely so that they can choose to. Yes, that is exactly what I mean, chatter. Green equals that thing exactly. Um, but like I was saying, like the safe injection sites are there to help people. They have programs like that to help them in the safe injection sites. So it's like you're getting rid of a program that is already designed to work, that works in many different fucking countries around the world, including Portugal. But because it doesn't fit your agenda, that's it. You're just gonna take away people's bodily autonomy and their rights and force them into care that they don't want, and then making their mental health and their lives way worse.
To themselves or others, and is just a chronic user of the system. We had one person we tracked 186 times used an emergency room last year because of overdose. That's $1 million that is being spent not treating that person to get them recovered. So we're then going to step in and say that's a person that needs to be ordered into treatment 90 to 120 days and then get them onto a pathway to recovery. So I don't.
What? Okay. Okay, Danielle Smith.
Know if that would exist in a truly free enterprise system. I don't know how they would be able to do that in a truly private market system.
So in the United States, nonprofits step in for that, and there are incentives for that, but at least the nonprofits are held accountable because they're not in the middle of it in the way that the government is. It is so difficult to incentivize, let's say, a doctor.
Don't worry, chatter. I knew what you meant when you said sniffing. It's okay. I understood. I understood you meant skiing. That's okay. Me neither. I don't touch that stuff. Only the flower green stuff.
You gave the example of a doctor working in 2 operating rooms at the same time. Well, how do you incentivize that doctor to want to take on that extra work if they're not compensated for that, or if everybody's equally compensated?
Oh, I know. Pay them. Pay them their equal share. Pay them their fair share. Pay them for the work that they do instead of underfunding hospitals. There we go. We solved the problem. Now we don't have to go to the deadly American system that is radicalizing people and like unaliving them at extravagant rates.
Why should you work double, triple the amount of time or as hard? That's really the issue. When the government steps in, you take away that incentive from the employee to.
Yeah, I would in a heartbeat with my taxes. I would pay even higher taxes than I already do if it meant for doctors to get paid more. So I don't have to live like an American, which is absolutely horrid and terrible. And I would never, ever, 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 ever want to live like an American.
To work harder. And then you also take the incentive away from, it was a homeless person that you gave as an example. Why should they negotiate? Why should they even care what they're being charged if they're not being charged ever?
Yeah.
Right? I would pay them with my taxes. It's how it works here in Canada.
And so it's that tricky situation.
It is difficult. Sometimes
and I would, because I would pay for them and they'd pay for me, and then we would all be covered and it would be beautiful and kumbaya. And then we would all dance around the Americans with our higher life expectancy than they have.
You need to step in when somebody is not in a position or sound mind to
Right,
make
and
their own
somebody needs help.
decisions.
Right.
Yeah, well, because this is one of the reasons I think that the U.S. president has brought in tariffs is because America has a very serious opioid and fentanyl overdose problem.
Yes.
We do too. But I think you deal with it both ways. You deal with it from a law
Thank you. I'm glad you do.
enforcement way, which we are. We came through with border security measures where we put more people on the border with drug sniffer dogs, commercial vehicle inspection, drones, all-weather drones, because we need those in Canada, as well as Black Hawk helicopters. We wanted to show we're taking the border issue seriously. So let's deal with the law enforcement side. But for somebody who's in the throes of addiction, if we're going to get them off of drugs and back onto an independent life, then we have to deal with the treatment side of it too. And we're leading on both of those in Canada. In our province.
Then fund mental health programs. Oh my God. My mom is a mental health worker. They are excruciatingly underfunded. Worse than fucking hospitals are. Fund them with my taxes, please.
We know where the drugs are coming from. The fentanyl, tranq, these things are coming in from China through Mexico. We know about this.
Yeah.
So addressing it really where it starts is so significant.
Yeah, completely.
And parents are incredibly worried in the United States about what is happening with these drugs.
With good reason, because they keep on getting more and more toxic and higher and higher potency. But when you look at the pathway they've gone down, your West Coast and our West Coast, California, Oregon, Washington, all the way up into BC. The idea that the solution was enabling that, if you just gave safe supply
that's
and
in
safe
San
injection.
Francisco. They're giving out needles.
Completely. And I think they had the experiment in Canada too.
Okay, safe supply, again, is good. It helps people get treatment. They also have programs in a lot of the ones in Canada where they provide food and they provide shelter and they provide different places for people to stay. And a lot of them also, on top of that, not only provide a bunch of different resources for people, but they also provide treatment plans. So not only are they preventing the spread of diseases like HIV and AIDS and other transferable diseases through the sharing of needles, they're also providing clothing. They're also providing beds. They're also providing food. They're also providing so many more other resources that these people wouldn't have without these programs. Danielle Smith and this fucking PragerU Barbie don't know what the fuck they're talking about. And they're demonizing programs that are doing the exact thing that they want to do by treating these people. They just don't like it because they have it stigmatized in their fucking stupid, empty heads. Yeah. That really sucks. And bosses can be really shitty. My partner works in the restaurant industry too, and his boss is absolutely horrid.
Which was an abject failure. In fact, now we're seeing that same province. You talk about the change in attitude. Is it happening in Canada? Well, the government that had the ideology to bring in safe supply and try to do this for the last 20 years is now following our pathway. They also are going to do compassionate intervention. They've also stopped the experiment with decriminalization. And so I think that, sometimes bad ideas, sadly, have to play themselves out before they become so obvious that it's gone in the wrong direction. And at least we're now beginning to have a different conversation in the country.
Yeah, this is something I've been praying about so hard.
Yeah, a conversation that is literally making it so that mayors like in cities close to me completely shut down safe injection sites. Like is absurd. Absolutely horrid.
That we just protect these kids from the drugs, the ideologies. I mean, it's really inflicting the.
By the way, drugs don't leave safe injection sites. They stay there. These people are absolutely just idiotic and don't know what they're talking about.
West.
Yeah. And I think a lot of it, and it's interesting how you've identified all of those pieces. When I look at where do you have the culture change, where do you begin with the culture change. Part of it, of course, is K-12 education. And so in our province, we fund a lot of different education options so that you can go to a local public community funded school. We also have Catholic schools because we have a constitutional support for our Catholic school system. We also support independent schools with a smaller amount of contribution, and we allow homeschooling. We've got some of the most number of kids who are homeschooled in our province. We have this concept of a charter school as well.
You also have the most amount of child marriages in your province too, but I don't consider that to be a good thing, Danielle Smith.
They're able to get the funding directly, and they have different types of programs for STEM and arts and girls programs. And so that to me is one way, is you've got to make sure that there's enough choice for parents in K-12 education. The other aspect is that we knew that we had to make greater friends with the unions, because the unions had tended to line up, I think, on one side of the political spectrum. And yet, if you look at those blue-collar jobs are happening because conservatives want to build things. we want to do mining operations, build pipelines, develop resources. And so I think having a bit of a division in the union movement so that it wasn't monolithically on one side of the ideological spectrum was really important as well. But also the culture shaping industries, like in the media and film. Those are areas where you do see ideas enforced and reinforced. So the media is important to have the range of discussion. We've already talked about that. But America's greatest export has always been cultural export through Hollywood.
Yeah, we've made some mistakes on that front.
And they're being corrected now. One of my show that everybody's talking about is Landmen.
Yep.
And it's I'm sort of astonished to see that you've got a character that is promoting and talking about how important it is to develop the resource industry.
I don't even know what the fuck that show is. Jesus Christ. I'm assuming it's about big oil if Danielle Smith fucking likes it.
So that to me is kind of the cutting edge of where social change happens. And I don't know all of the dynamics about why those kinds of stories are now being told, but it's really important.
But
that
have you noticed that the clip has gone viral?
Yes.
Which just goes to show that people are starving for truth.
Yes.
They're starving for intellectual truth. We're breaking through the barriers of the legacy media.
What clip? Oh my God, let me know what this is. I'm so confused.
In the past, you would have never been able to hear that message. But, you know, it's...
What message? What are we talking about? These people are so bad at explaining shows. Oh my God, no wonder they think that everything is evil. They can't even retain fucking anything about the media that they are consuming and then tell people about it in a constructive manner.
It's morning in America again. It's morning in the world again when you can actually convey truth and have clips like the one you're describing go viral because you actually get to hear the truth about energy. Energy is freedom. It's prosperity. It's modernity. It's everything. And you have this clip that probably 20 years ago, you would not be able to watch. Before I went into the education, I could not watch a video like that one. And now it's literally going viral where you have an Angelino and an Albertan both talking about the same exact clip. It just shows you how powerful that is.
That's funny. You wouldn't have even been able to have that go viral maybe 2 years ago,
right?
Let alone 20 years ago. But those are the spaces that I think conservatives need to repopulate. Conservatives need to be in the media. They need to be in our arts and culture. They need to be in K-12 education, and they need to be part of union leadership as well. Because I think that those really are the areas that have led a lot of.
I'm so confused. I'm assuming it's an oil show if Danielle Smith loves it.
Of the debate in the last number of years. And maybe it was just that conservatives were busy making money and not thinking about culture as much as they should have been. But
or maybe they're just stupid and don't know how to actually like anything or make art because they just look at everything as a commodity rather than as like art.
Matters. It really does.
I'm going to forever remember you as the new Iron Lady, a fellow freedom lover.
Yeah.
What do you want people to remember you by?
Those are good things to be remembered by.
No, they're not. Oh my God. Ask any British person about fucking Margaret Thatcher. They would entirely disagree. They would say that as an insult.
I am a little bit of a nerd when it comes to philosophy and ideas. I think because I started off at the Fraser Institute and got introduced to the Austrian economists, Joseph Schumpeter and Friedrich Hayek, I've often thought about how do you apply these principles to trying to transform government. And so we're still new at it. I'm only 2.5 years in, but those ideas have stayed with me. And if we can find some ways to make government serve the interests of the public better, be smaller, leaner, more effective, more competitive, less costly, then we'd be happy to share that with the rest of the world.
Well, we're going to be following and watching you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ew. Oh my God. That was horrible. That was absolutely horrible.